Hello and welcome. I hope that you found this video helpful. I'm going to go over some key points of the assignment for synthesis, and we're going to talk just a little bit about expectations. Because the critique paper, I thought that directions were clear, but I also am going to add this, I guess, auditory learning experience for you so that you're not just reading and you have something to look at. And I've decided to update the video, so that's why a new one's getting posted. The first example that you're going to see here is a paper that a student wrote and gave me permission to use. Please always respond to me, yay or nay, if you'd like me to use one of your papers as an example, because if I ask you, it means that it's worthy of sharing with other students, and I usually choose at least a couple every semester so that I can give some examples. Now, this is in APA, so I want to make sure that you understand that. Only one person in this class should be doing MLA, and if you did the introduction discussion board, then I told you which format you should be using, and I also if you didn't do that discussion board, I also gave you that feedback in another way, or I based it on your major. So all of your formatting structures are based completely on what major you're doing, your course of study, or your final course of study. So if you communicated something that you're going on to your master's to do something that warrants APA, you were assigned APA. So please follow those. I will not give credit to students who do not do that simply because it's not in the right format. So hopefully you understand that. But this was a concussion management protocol paper that is pretty good. This person has all the right components. So if we look, now remember, this is a student example. So if there are errors, I didn't correct those in this because I want you to see a true example of an A paper. So if you look at this one, this has a 2. Now this is actually in the wrong font, which you probably wouldn't automatically notice that, but it's in Calibri, which is the default font for Windows. I'm sorry, for Word. So please note that you should be using Times New Roman 12 that you see up here, and you can just use the pull down boxes to achieve that. It's pretty simple to do. Now if you notice, this person has the introduction, and it doesn't say introduction. That is common practice. You do not, in APA, you do not put introduction for introduction because it's assumed. And then notice also that they didn't include an abstract, or an author's note. Sometimes students are expected to do that in APA, but for the most part they're not, and abstracts are pretty simple. They are just simply a summary of your paper, and so I don't really feel the need to have you go that extra step. So I want to show you something in this paper, since I'm going over it, that's wrong here. So you see this where it looks kind of big in this section. It's because Word actually defaults to a certain setting. Now when I decide to check that to make sure the spacing is right, here's what happens. So if you pull down this, you're going to see remove here, and if you ever see that, that means that it's got too much space. So that's a simple test. I just fixed it right there. Voila, it is correct. So please make sure that you understand that this example is imperfect, and that's why I showed you this, to show you one of the points that were, one of the areas that she had points deducted in this. Also note that she has done her title correctly. That is in italics, and it uses title caps. I've seen a few people use all lowercasing like you would in the actual citation, and that is incorrect inside the text. So please keep that in mind. Now you may already know this, but I want to make sure I cover a few things. Look how organized this is, even without reading it. The first point, the third main point. So they are summarizing the article, the first article, and then the second article. So, and there's some things on the rubric that you'll want to notice. I have you actually name that article before you summarize it. So please be clear about which one you're summarizing in those sections. You should have one paragraph per article, and that's it. So paragraphs shouldn't span an entire page. Now you can see the blue here, so you can see that Word is picking up on something. We won't go over that. But again, here's the spacing issue. So you'll want to make sure that yours does not have this same spacing issue, and you simply go up there and hit remove. It's really simple to do. So you can actually download this paper and use it as your template if you'd like. I would love nothing more, because what happens is when students don't use headings, sometimes, now not everybody, sometimes they get a little confused and put things in the wrong order or mix things, mix and match. And I think just having these little headings, they're just so helpful to keep your mind in that space that you're supposed to be in. Now, when you go back to do your mini critiques, remember in that practice critique assignment, those questions were there. So the questions that you should be answering were in the practice assignment. That is also listed inside of your rubric. So please be paying attention to those tiny details as they're so important. So this is another example of where she's done one paragraph of the first one, the critique. The second article has one paragraph, and it's a rather large paragraph. Not my favorite to see something that long, but keep in mind that 3 sentences does not a paragraph constitute. So 3 sentences in a paragraph is definitely gonna get a comment from me that this needs to be developed. There's really no peer-reviewed journal article that you could possibly do that on and effectively cover the material. And if you think about it, a paragraph with only 3 sentences really has, that's why I hate the 3 to 5 sentence rule. It really only has your introductory sentence, your topic sentence. The first sentence is that topic sentence. The second sentence is some sort of information, and then you have a transitional sentence. So it really is not developed and not college worthy. So please keep that in mind. And then the other rule about that is generally that, a paragraph should never span more than half a page. So it shouldn't span an entire page. So it's not really a paragraph. There should be a logical break. So then we go to our synthesis section, and I'm kind of particular about these. So I'm going through and correcting these, and you can see the correction over and over, so hopefully you'll pick up on it. Because the one that's posted does have that issue, so you will want to remove those spaces. And all levels of contact sport should be implemented, so they start out with that information. And they start, if you look, now here's something else that was taken off for. While you might want to mention this title once, okay, it cannot span, you cannot mention titles over and over in the synthesis section. You should be using in-text citations, and she's got a good example here. Those are what you should be using for this. So she's saying that both of those articles had this in common, and the in-text citation is perfectly capable of communicating that. And then mentioning it, like I said, once is fine, but going overboard will cost some points. And really, when it says supports the symptoms of concussion, as long as this is general, so if you're thinking in terms of when do I do in-text citations, this is the rule. If it is a quote or if it is a paraphrase, there is an in-text. Now, if you're writing an entire paragraph on something, like this one, she's actually missing an in-text citation here. If you're writing an entire paragraph, those unless it's a quote and then you're mixing and matching and switching, if you're writing a whole section on this one article that you see here, and I'm sure that the other part, she's already got a citation up there, but furthermore, female athletes are more likely to, this is probably coming from an article which doesn't have a citation down here. So general rule is if you're writing a paragraph and it includes both of your citations, or both of your sources, you're going to want to use the example you saw above. So this would go toward the end of these two, I'm having trouble highlighting it, but these two would go toward the end of that paragraph. Because you took it from both. So you're talking about commonalities between the two articles. It would look like that at the end of the paragraph that you're discussing it in. So that was one correction that needed to be made in this one. According to both articles, so again, they're talking about what's in common there. Okay, and there may be some differences between the articles, which is you're supposed to discuss. So this section of synthesis is really slightly too short. Like this is just barely. So really you need to make sure you're doing a thorough examination of those articles. making sure that you really pull together those differences and similarities. And they should have some common topics in it, or you can't use those articles. So just to be clear. And then down here, the conclusion, of course, the spacing you'll have to fix if you use this template. The conclusion's pretty good. Make sure that you are completely avoiding first person. Completely. No I's, we's, us, our, none of that. In academic writing, unless it's explicit that you can use first person, such as like if you're doing a part where you're giving a response, really in truth in a response you can completely avoid first person also. So just keep that in mind, that unless it's explicitly stated that it's okay, you cannot use first person in most academic writing. Another thing I'd like you to avoid is contractions. So contractions are generally considered conversational speech, if you will. So try to avoid all of those and simply spell them out. Do not, right? So don't is do not. So avoid those on your synthesis paper as well. My goal is for you to write more academically by the end of this class. And so I want to give you some tools to do that. And I expect that since I'm telling you that you will make those changes. Remember, my overall goal for all students is improvement over time. And while I do look and take off points for things, I still look at, hey, are you improving and what feedback can I give you to help you make it better? Okay, so you will notice one thing on references. Now on MLA, this is going to say works cited. And on MLA, you're going to have that other header information and you won't have these running heads. You'll have the last name and the page number, which I believe the MLA student in here already knows that, but I want to mention that. Now these references are also APA, and they are pretty good. This one, okay, see the difference here? I want you to alert yourself to this. This is what I was seeing in text, and it shouldn't be. So this is correct for the citation. And actually the how should be capitalized. So it should actually look like this. And then they have 5 through 14. So they don't have this part in here on the first citation. Sometimes that happens where you won't have that volume and issue and you have to use just page numbers. So this is correct for what's available to the student. Now this one, if you notice, there's a difference in this title here. This is not formatted like this one. See the lowercase? So you would want to correct this, and then the rest of that looks correct. So then the next one, let's look at this one. Same problem here. This is from a peer-reviewed journal article, and they used 4 articles, which when I talk about the synthesis section, you can imagine that should have been longer because it wasn't a full 4 paragraphs. So she did get an A- on it, and you can look through here and see. So, and it was really close to a B+. She had some information that was pretty high quality. So keep that in mind as you're going through here, that you make the sections appropriate. Your longest section will be synthesis. You'll have a paragraph of about 5 or a few more sentences on each summary, 5 or a few more than that sentences on each critique. Then your conclusion would be about that, 5 or a few more sentences. And then your synthesis will take up the bulk of your essay. So I won't go over the rest of those because I have 15-minute segments to make these not so hard to watch. But I just wanted to point out some things on this. So, and it actually was an A- paper, so please keep that in mind and as you do some work. Thank you for listening, and there will also be a video on the rubric and writing prompt that will be posted as well.